So I guess it will be a very, very rich debate. Okay, I guess it's 2 on 2. So we will start officially. So welcome to that session that is part of the annual meeting of the thematic working group on agriculture, food security, and land use under the umbrella of the NDC partnership with our sister organization and partners, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, CCAC, together with the World Resources Institute and Oxfam. We have this session today, 1 hour and a half, on how countries are reducing agricultural emission of short-lived climate pollutants to simultaneously reduce air pollution and climate change, while benefiting for also food security. So let me start saying that FAO is a strategic partner to the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. I will use CCAC, that is shorter. So CCAC is a unique partnership of 71 countries and more than 75 international organizations and NGOs, plus also cities and other stakeholders dedicated to reducing short-lived climate pollutants. CCAC focuses on supporting countries in their effort to advance national and local climate and air quality and development priorities, and we will have a lot of presentation evidencing that, whilst contributing to the global effort of the Paris Agreement on the main goal to keep the temperature below 2 degrees C, and if we can, that would be better 1.5 degrees C. So CCAC is providing sector approaches that directly support countries to catalyze practices and policy change to reduce short-lived climate pollutant, including work on the agriculture section. So that's why also FAO is strongly present here. Action to reduce short-lived climate pollutant, including methane and black carbon, have multiple benefits and can help protect food security. And here I will provide you some numbers. So it can help reducing climate change impact, preventing up to 0.6 degrees C of warming by 2015. So it's quite important number, even if it seems small, but it's really relevant. Reduction in air pollution impact on crop yield, halving global crop losses from these pollutants by 2015 by reducing mostly methane emission, which is an ingredient in the formation of tropospheric ozone, as you might know. This would save between 4 to up to 33 billion US dollar. It can also support to fight and to achieve the SDG 2 on zero hunger. As you know, currently 1 in 9 people go hungry every day, and worldwide 2.5 billion people depend on agriculture for their livelihood. So tackling here air pollution and climate change through the reduction of short-lived climate pollutant can really help to solve the hunger equation on the Sustainable Development Goal for 2030 and here SDG 2. And also it will help balancing climate action with poverty alleviation. Acting on climate change, especially in the near term, because here we are really focusing on short-lived substance, which is really critical to ensure food security in the coming years and preserving the livelihood of millions of people. Also, at the same time, you know, agriculture is a sector that contributes to climate change. So here we are addressing two sides on the emission of greenhouse gas from that sector. So the goal of the Paris Agreement cannot be met without transformative change or transforming agenda in the agriculture sector. So for that, we need to incorporate more ambitious, explicit, and direct action in the agriculture sector in the nationally determined contribution, and we need to enhance the nationally determined contribution. And as you know, this year is key for that. So the objective of this session is to show how countries are reducing agricultural emission of short-lived climate pollutant as part of their NDC enhancement process that can contribute to improve air pollution and climate with benefits for food security, so triple benefits. So we will have 3 parts in that event. First, CCAC will feature its work on supporting countries to enhance their ambition on the agricultural NDC. As part of this process, CCAC commissioned a paper developed by our partner World Resources Institute, so WRI, and Oxfam, on opportunities to increase ambition in the agriculture sector. That will so we will learn a little bit in a presentation at the end. The second part of the event, we will showcase examples from countries. So we will have example today from Indonesia, Costa Rica, Kenya, and China on how they are reducing agricultural emission of short-lived climate pollutant as part of the NDC enhancement process. Here we will see also how they are doing this in partnership with CCAC and collaborating with FAO and other partners like the Global Research Alliance on Agricultural Greenhouse Gas, that known most of the time like GRA, Global Research Alliance only, who are actively working in Indonesia, Costa Rica, and Kenya. And then after the presentation on the third part, that will be the paper produced by WRI Oxfam, after we will have a moment of exchange. I hope, so I count on the panelists to respect the time and to have sufficient time to exchange and to respond to any question from the audience. So without further ado, let me introduce the first panelist, Daniel McDougall, so Senior Fellow at the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, also former Climate Change Ambassador and Chief Negotiator for Canada, as well as Assistant to the Deputy Minister. Dan, perhaps to save time, I will ask you to share your screen and to start with the presentation. Okay, perfect. So I will close my mic. We can hear you, we can see the presentation. Perfect.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you very much, Marcel, for the introduction, and thank you to FAO for your leadership in supporting us in this work on agriculture. I think perhaps just to set the context for the work that we're doing on agriculture, that'd be a good idea to just give you a brief rundown of what we've been doing with the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, the CCAC, over the last year as we're developing our new strategic plan, and look forward a little bit to what that means for our future work on agriculture. So over the course of the last years, we've been coming up with a new strategic plan to 2030. We've done a lot of engagement with our partners in both countries and international organizations and the non-governmental community, and have looked at how we're going to advance our work, and are looking towards how we get very substantive reductions over the course of the next decade in short-lived climate pollutants, to essentially to the maximum technical extent possible as we foresee it now. So as we look across the spectrum of methane emissions, for example, we're looking to achieve at least 40% of a methane reduction by 2030. For black carbon, another of our substances, a 76% reduction over the course of the next decade, and almost completely eliminating HFCs by 2050 compared to 2010. So a significant program of work that we're looking to advance. And of course, agriculture is an important component of those both methane and black carbon reductions. So our new 2030 strategy for the CCAC is focused on three kind of key directions. First is the overall agenda of driving an ambitious reduction agenda. As you mentioned in your introduction, there are enormous and important climate benefits, particularly in terms of the temperature reduction aspects. Because methane is such a short-lived pollutant in the atmosphere, you start to see significant impacts on reducing the rate of warming in the very near term in a way that you don't get with reductions of other emissions. So it's very important to the temperature goal. But as you mentioned as well, it's also very important because of the other benefits associated with it, as we'll see in the presentations today, that there are significant benefits for the agricultural system itself in terms of avoided crop losses, as well as critical health impacts by reducing the ozone that comes with methane into the atmosphere. So the first key direction for us is continuing to drive that ambitious agenda. The second aspect is really focusing at the national level and how we support national transformative actions, including in the agriculture sector. And then the third area that we're looking at is advancing policy relevant research and analysis. So there's still a lot of research that will be beneficial to the policy agenda of reducing emissions, and analytical work that will support countries and other organizations in driving those types of reductions. So how are we working or making some significant changes in terms of the organization of the CCAC? The key point to note here is that, as you mentioned, we're a very significantly large coalition with over 70 countries and 70 international institutions and a comparable number of non-governmental organizations. So these partners are really still the driving force of the organization through which we will be working. We used to have a series of initiatives. We are shifting that now to a focus on hubs, where we will attempt to join together the communities that are working on particular action areas and make sure that we're bringing people together in a way that is quite synergistic, we hope. One of those is a strategic planning hub. This is kind of our former area supporting national action and planning, which we'll be expanding into more countries and more research areas, particularly on the socioeconomic aspects of planning. But we're also intending to develop sectoral hubs, and in this area, one of the ones we'll be looking to create will be a new agricultural hub. We also will be continuing and enhancing our scientific advisory panel, which has been a key element of providing the knowledge base and the confidence that decision makers need in order to take actions to reduce SLCPs. And we are still going to have a very strong and engaged secretariat in terms of driving our work. So for each of our hub areas, what we're intending to do is develop an engagement strategy. So for agriculture, that is something that we'll be doing as well. And the intention here is to look at what are the particular milestones and goals that we can do within this hub area and how we will set out to reach those. We also are structured now to have some flagship programs and campaigns that we'll periodically use to advance some particular priorities, as well as continuing our process of strategic collaboration and alliances, such as we have with the FAO and a number of the other organizations who are participating in this session today. And still have intending to use our funding to help develop capacity in countries and as a catalyst for some of the transformative actions that will be needed. A few things I'd like to highlight in terms of upcoming aspects that'll be relevant for this community that we have on now. We're about to release our global methane assessment, where we've looked with the research community at what is the state of methane emissions globally across all sectors, and what are the potential reduction possibilities within that, and then correspondingly, what will be the impact of that from both an emissions reduction perspective, as well as the cost and the economic benefits associated with those reductions from a health perspective, from a crop loss perspective, etc. And within that, we're developing an online tool that organizations, countries, and individuals will be able to access themselves to look at, from a particular country perspective or a group of countries, what kind of changes are possible and what will be the index of those from a temperature perspective or from the perspective of the other benefits. We're also intending in the end of May to have a series of science policy dialogues, and certainly something that this community may be interested in would be whether or not to organize a particular science policy dialogue around agricultural emissions and agricultural actions. And this is a good opportunity to engage with our scientific advisory panel but also the other portions of the coalition that are directly interested in what are the actions then taken to implement the science that we're seeing that drive the reductions that we're looking at. There are a number of countries on this session today from Africa. One of the things I'd like to note is that we are in the midst of working on an Africa assessment of SLCPs, and certainly from the scientific research community, if there's interest in participating in that, please get in touch with us and we can put you in contact with the people working on that. We're looking to complete that work over the course of this year and hope to have at least a summary for policymakers available for by the time of the COP of this year, looking at Africa in particular. And again, because of its importance from a development context and from an emissions perspective within the overall SLCP framework, certainly the agricultural sector is going to be an important element of that Africa assessment that we're working on. We're also working on a number of pieces on the COVID recovery. We've published some recent reports looking at the potential of SLCP inclusion within the recovery packages. And we're currently working on a sectoral aspect with GIZ in the ASEAN region, looking explicitly at agriculture and how to further enhance the work in that region on incorporating agricultural measures into the recovery process. And then the last thing to note is that as we're looking forward this year towards the COP in Glasgow, we're going to have a series of events in the regional climate weeks and other fora where we'll be looking to advance work on SLCP mitigation. And certainly within that, we would like to be featuring the agricultural aspects of that quite prominently. So that's kind of a highlight of the kind of changes we've been making in the CCAC structure in our strategic plan to 2030 and a few of the upcoming aspects that touch on SLCP mitigation generally, but also the agricultural sector most specifically. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for respecting the time first, but also for that really interesting and wide presentation covering all the different aspects of CCAC. Really nice to see that new strategy taking the direction toward 2030 in line with a lot of different agenda, and also to see that science is anchored in the art of the work of CCAC, because we can just develop a strong science-policy interface if we have a good science behind. So nice to see all that upcoming, and I really want to see the result on the global methane assessment, on the Africa assessment. So really nice. Thank you so much. I'm quite sure we will have questions for people online. If you have any question to that, do not hesitate to put already here, but we will gather all the questions at the end after all the presentation. So now we will move on to illustrate what CCAC is doing in supporting country, and with an example presented by Dr. Agus Susanto. So Dr. Agus Susanto is the director of the Indonesian Center for Animal Research and Development under the Ministry of Agriculture in Indonesia. Previously, he was the director of Indonesian Center for Feed Quality Testing and Certification under the same ministry. He is graduated from School of Veterinary Medicine at Gajah Mada University, and with a master and PhD degree in the field of nutrition science and feed technology from the Agronomic Institute of Bogor, known as the IBP University in Indonesia. And he has a strong experience in different fields, from quality management of laboratory, feed inspector, on nutrition and formulation, actively involved in several associations, such as Indonesian Association of Nutrition and Feed Science, and also an important list of publications related to food quality. And we are really eager to listen from you, Dr. Agus, what Indonesia is doing related to the topic of the meeting today, related to the NDC, and also in partnership with the CCAC Global Research Alliance. So, Dr. Agus, you have the floor for 8 minutes. Thank you. You should unmute yourself and put your presentation. We can see the screen. We have not, we have a hybrid presentation mode where we can see the current slide on the next slide.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Martial Pedro. Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Agus Susanto, Director of Indonesian Center for Animal Research and Development, Ministry of Agriculture, Republic of Indonesia. Indonesia is very grateful to be in this meeting. I would like to present about the Indonesian approach to updating national determined contribution, NDC. Outline of the presentation: Indonesia NDC highlight to NDC implementation and updating, 3 contribution of international organization, and 4 lesson learned. Indonesia's target is to reduce the amount of emission by 29% and increase it up to 41% by 2030 with the support of international cooperation. Mitigation sector such as energy, waste, industrial processes and product use, agriculture and forestry. Adaptation sector, agriculture, water, energy, security, forestry, maritime, etc. Agriculture accounts for 14% of Indonesian total emission, excluded the land use. Ladies and gentlemen, total Indonesian emission from livestock are about 31,000 gigagram carbon dioxide equivalent in 2019. Emission from livestock consists of enteric fermentation, manure management, direct nitrous oxide manure management, and indirect nitrous manure management. Blue bar represent enteric fermentation, orange bar represent manure management, gray bar represent direct nitrous oxide manure management, and yellow bar represent indirect nitrous oxide manure management. From 2000 until 2019, Indonesia's emissions trends increase year by year. In P chart, we know that the methane from enteric fermentation, the highest is from cattle, beef cattle. And following sheep, buffalo, goat, dairy cattle, and horse. Methane from enteric fermentation are more than a half from beef cattle. Methane from manure management, the highest is still beef cattle, following poultry, buffalo, dairy cattle, and sheep. Direct and indirect nitrous oxide from manure management, like this graph, trend increase year by year. Indonesian emission remain on upward trajectory, and that it's still likely to overdrive in NDC targets. In Indonesia, the largest source of emission in the agriculture sector are from the cultivation of rice, 40%, the cultivation of organic soil, 21%, livestock, 14%, and synthetic fertilizer, 11%. Methane emission, mainly enteric fermentation, need to decline 10% by 2030 and by 35% by 2050 from 2010 level. Nitrous oxide emission, mainly from fertilizer and manure, need to be reduced by 10% by 2010 and by 10% by 2050. Ladies and gentlemen, support required improving quality of monitoring, evaluating, and reporting. 2, improving capacity of researchers, including regional and local government. And 3, technology transfer, technology dissemination, pilot project of improved system. NDC implementation strategy consists of nine factors. 1, building ownership and commitment, capacity building, enabling environment, developing framework and network. 1, GAG data policy, developing policy planning and intervention program, developing guidance on NDC implementation, and 9, monitoring and review of NDC. Ladies and gentlemen, long-term strategy for low carbon and climate resilience consists of a defined pathway and achieving peaking and of emission, conducive environment for investment, guide implementation and development of subsequent, and 2, strengthening the vision of 100-year Indonesia, vision of Indonesia 2045. To calculation emission, Tier 2 emission factor, contribution from livestock population, feed intake, gross energy intake. Livestock population based on the data from Statistics Indonesia and information data Directorate General of Livestock and Animal Health, feed intake and gross energy intake based on experimental research. We need coordination among agencies from Bappenas, National Planning and Development Agency, Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Forestry and Environment, and local government, province or district. Ladies and gentlemen, current livestock management system vary depending on the socio-economic level and the skill of livestock enterprise. Smallholder traditional grazing on public land, smallholder cut and carry of grasses from public land, cut and carry fodder for improved grassland, and improve system using quality grasses such as elephant grasses, legume, and concentrate. The best practice include improved grazing of better quality grasses as well as tree legume using manure for fertilizer, artificial insemination by using selected pool, and biodigestion of manure for production methane as a source of energy. Indonesia challenge with in improving livestock management system capacity. Farmers' capacity need to be increased to adapt and adopt technology. Capital provide farmer with applied technology, feed technology, manure technology, veterinary technology, etc. The Indonesian lesson must be valuable. Our system can different than other countries. Therefore, we are open any situation to improve our activity to reduce the greenhouse emission from livestock sector. Thank you very much, Martel Product. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agus, for sharing the experience from your country. We can see the challenge of still increasing emission and how the country react and to embed the best practices that fits national circumstances to address that challenge. It was very interesting. I'm quite sure it will raise a lot of questions also on how to transfer the lesson learned from your country to other country. So please keep with us, and we will move on the question and answer session after. Now we will move on a second presentation. We will change from continent. We will go to Africa, and with us we will have Dr. Bernard Kimoro, that is from the State Department of Livestock, Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Cooperatives in Kenya. Is in charge of the livestock-based climate change adaptation and mitigation unit at the Directorate of Livestock Production. Dr. Kimoro?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I invite you to share your screen, the presentation.
Thank you, Martial. Let me share my screen. Hello, everyone. As Dr. Martial talked, I'm Bernard Kimoro. Yes. So I'm going to share my screen to everybody. First, I would like to, I hope the screen is visible. Thank you. Yeah, first I would like to take this opportunity to really appreciate the invitation. It's really quite good for us to be able to meet a very diverse group and also to hear the experience of Indonesia as well, which has been one of the countries I think we have been working together with in terms of the CCAC initiatives. So I'm going to make a presentation about Kenya's experience. It's going to be a bit more broad than Indonesia. We look at the entire agricultural sector, basically to see what the country has done in terms of creating coherence between the activities in the agricultural sector and how that can also be able to support the NDC targets that the country has set. So as a way of introduction, Kenya, just like a lot of developing countries, depends on agriculture, where it is a driver of the food systems and also the economy. We look at food security, economic growth, incomes, employment creation, and even foreign exchange earnings. We depend on the agriculture sector for that. Indeed, if you look at the agricultural sector, which comprises of the crops, livestock, and fisheries, and how they link with the overall national or the gross domestic product, the sector contributes about 51%, which means it's a very crucial sector. This is about 26% directly, where people are actually earning incomes direct from their production. And then the other economic activities, value addition, processing, transportation, another 25%. But just like any other sector that depends on climate, our sector is very sensitive to the climate change and related impacts that we are seeing. So Kenya, for example, we look at 87% of the country. 84% of the country is actually arid and semi-arid, which is very fragile. And only about 16% is in the high potential agricultural zones, where we have a lot of intensive activities, both livestock and fisheries. So it's a very sensitive kind of sector. These are kind of impacts that you've seen from climate change, whether it's the extreme weather events related to issues of flooding. We have droughts. These are very common to us. We also have the slow onset events, such as especially the increase in temperatures. And all this is leading to decline in crop yields. Of course, there is reduction in production and revenues. We have, for the livestock, especially being a two-level kind of thing, the feeds go down, especially the forages. We have now incidences of diseases coming in. And of course, that lowers productivity and it affects the whole country. Suitability of the country is also changing because the traditionally high potential areas are also being affected. And this has an influence on the crops and the kind of animal forages that we can be able to keep. So there is a general shift in the agroecological or climatic zones in the country in terms of agricultural production. The impact of this climate change is quite severe. At the national level, we are looking at 3 to 5% of the GDP is lost on average. So there's a socioeconomic loss of about 3 to 5% of GDP every year that happens. That translates to almost 0.9 to 1.5 billion annually, which is substantial. A case in point, a drought we had in the period 2008 to 2011 led to a very large loss in terms of nationally, where it was over 100 billion US dollars. But the El Nino floods, and these are incidences that are becoming more common, affecting El Nino, La Nina effects. They are leading to serious effects in the agricultural sector alone. So it's quite a serious issue. Now, in 2019, we had a drought. And if you look at the classification there, a small portion of the country was not affected. But if you look at most of the country, more than 3/4 of it was either stressed or in crisis. Yeah, so those are countries that have become food insecure as climate change becomes more severe. But what we are saying is climate change is not affecting the agricultural sector alone. The sector is also part of the problem. So it's also contributing to the issues of greenhouse gas into the atmosphere, which is exacerbating the problem. As a country, okay, our emissions are not so great, 0.1, but most of these emissions are coming from the agricultural sector. Kenya alone, if you look at the emissions from the sector, could be around 70 metric tons carbon dioxide equivalent. Compared to the region, we are higher because the region is about 34. But obviously, if you look at the average compared to the average in the OECD countries, we are much less. These emissions, as you can see, are majorly from the agricultural sector. 58 or 59% of it, national emissions are from the agricultural sector. then about 25 from energy, especially the generation part of it. That is also a contribution, but the agricultural sector is quite a bit of a problem. Looking further, we can see within the agricultural sector, again, it's very evident. Most of the emissions are coming from livestock, especially through the enteric emissions. So that is quite a bit of a problem. We don't grow as much rice like Indonesia, so we don't have a lot of emissions coming from paddy fields. But in Kenya, it is the livestock, especially the issues of enteric emissions, as shown there. So basically, if you look at the trends, we can be able to see, as you can see there, there has been an increase in emissions generally from the agricultural sector. Of course, also from the land use and land use change, and forestry, it's fluctuating, but we can see there is a decline due to some policy issues. Electric generation, quite a bit of it, but is more related to the inventory that is being done, so we can see that. But what is worrying is that the agricultural sector, in terms of the enteric emission, we are having a bit of a problem. So the projections are that by 2030, if we continue the business as usual, our emissions will be about 143 metric tons carbon dioxide equivalent of greenhouse gas emissions. So there is an increasing upward trend, which you must look at how to tackle it. And of course, because most is from agriculture, then the lead in terms of mitigation has to come from that sector. At the agricultural sector specifically, this is what I was saying, most of the emissions are from enteric emissions. Agricultural soils, basically applications of fertilizers. There has been increasing emphasis on use of fertilizers. So we see that as an increasing kind of problem. Critically, also.
Sorry to cut, just to say that you have still 3 minutes maximum.
Oh, okay, fine, sorry. Yeah, so we have a very effective climate change landscape from the national level all the way to the specific sector policies. We have the climate smart strategy. We have an implementation framework. And also, we are now developing the M&E framework for climate actions within the agricultural sector. But more importantly, we now have what we call the long-term strategy for the agricultural sector, which we have developed with the partners, which is supposed to assist us in looking at how we can be able to have long-term agenda to guide near and long-term climate action planning. And it's supposed to be linked, we link this with the updating of NDC subsequently. So in terms of the country NDC, we submitted the first NDC in 2016, December, which included both the adaptation and mitigation contributions. The projections then was that we should be able to abate greenhouse gas emissions by 30% relative to the business as usual, which I already showed. But we have revised this. Now, NDC, we have increased ambitions. So our target is to increase the abatement of greenhouse gases by 32% below the business as usual, which I showed. In terms of the sectors, again, I said agriculture and land use, or their follow sector, with the 42% is expected to take the lead role in this. Our current NDC has prioritized climate actions for mitigation within the affordable sector. Now, if you look at the NDC, a number of actions have been prioritized. If you look at the adaptation actions, they are mainly related to climate smart agriculture. Yeah, how can we transform our agriculture to be able to fall in within the three pillars of productivity, resilience, and mitigation. So for adaptation, those are the ones that are shown there. We build resilience of the agricultural systems through sustainable land and soil management, strengthen communication systems on climate smart agriculture extension and agro-weather issues, and also increase productivity, and that is alluded to. Now, in terms of mitigation, we have within the agricultural sector, the dairy nationally appropriate or dairy NAMA, which is supposed to do that. We have a concept which is being prepared for submission. Preparation process began almost 4 years ago, but has not been complete. But we hope it will be able to go through. So that is one of the aspects that we think will be able to address mitigation within the agricultural sector. Now, in relation to what we have done with the support of especially CCAC, we have now in the agricultural sector, dairy is the only one which is using tier 2 for inventory of the greenhouse gases. We appreciate the contribution of CCAC in terms of building the capacity of the institutions in Kenya, developing a system for that, having a data system and framework to be able to develop the animal performance data, which we used for the tier 2. And that has been documented and we have it in place. We are in the process of updating it again, using more current data that came in 2019. Okay, some of the challenges, we have weak institutional capacity, poor cooperation and coordination across the sectors is still a problem. Our technical capacity is still not too good. So we need to improve in terms of policies, legislation, and programs to deliver effective programs which can attract finance. We are not well coordinated in terms of issues of data. And I had it mentioned from my colleague from Indonesia as well. So specific support would be or should be directed towards improving institutional capacity to manage the inventory compilation process, and also to establish sustainable system for producing regular inventories, improving national data collection and documentation, and then improving capacity to identify and assess the impact of specific mitigation actions. An adaptation framework of mitigation, how do we assess and how proof of it? And also to increase our capacity to develop bankable proposals that can attract access funds. So in conclusion, I think, so what you're saying is, in Kenya, the emissions reduction in agriculture sector, and especially livestock, is quite critical for us to realize the NDC targets. We need to build institutional capacity for measuring, reporting, and verification. And then we need very robust systems for data collection, archiving, and storage to ensure enhanced transparency in inventories. So thank you very much. Sorry for slightly going over.
Thank you. No, but I know it's always a challenge to share so many information, so rich information in such limited time. So thank you to you to show also the LTS, the long-term strategy, and NDC aligned together. This is very important. It was the case also for Indonesia. And on the NAMA aspect, I guess we will stay on that. We will also touch upon that aspect with Dr. Mauricio Chacon Navarro that will present on Costa Rica. So Mauricio is the coordinator of the Climate Action Office in the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock, MAG, in Costa Rica, and is managing the National Livestock Program for the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock. And in that capacity is the coordinator of the National Strategy for Low Carbon Livestock Farming on the NAMA, so the Nationally Appropriate Mitigation Action on Livestock. So Dr. Mauricio Chacon, you have 8 minutes.
Gracias. Vamos a compartir.
Por favor.
Me indica, por favor.
Muy bien. Presentación mod. Abajo.
Lo estoy haciendo, pero no me permite.
Close,
Bueno, vamos.
close to the Zoom. O presentación con diapositivas. Oh, okay. Sí, muy bien.
Listo. Bueno, vamos a correr los minutos a partir de este momento, ¿verdad?
Sí. Gracias.
Gracias por el espacio, por la oportunidad de compartir el trabajo de Costa Rica durante todos estos años. Gracias también a la gente que nos sigue. Nuestros mejores deseos para todos y todas en estos tiempos difíciles que definitivamente vamos a superar. Para efectos de contexto, Costa Rica es un país ubicado en América Central, con una población de 5 millones de habitantes, una población con un nivel de educación alto y con un nivel de desarrollo socioeconómico moderado. La pobreza multidimensional llega al 20%. La superficie del país son 51.000 kilómetros cuadrados, es un país pequeñito. De esta superficie, el 20% del territorio está dedicado a pasturas. Los cultivos agrícolas anuales alcanzan cerca del 3%, y de estos cultivos anuales, arroz es el cultivo predominante. Aunque es el cultivo predominante, no es un cultivo altamente emisor, pues es mayoritariamente de secano. El área sembrada con productos, con cultivos agrícolas permanentes es cercano al 11%. Dentro de los cultivos agrícolas destacan por su importancia el café, con cerca del 24% del área total, sembrada en cultivos permanentes, palma aceitera, caña de azúcar, banano y piña. Las áreas silvestres protegidas del país alcanzan una cuarta parte del territorio nacional, y la cobertura forestal del país es cercana al 52%. La economía costarricense está muy basada en servicios. No tenemos minería, no tenemos petróleo. Hay un desarrollo industrial sobre todo enfocado a productos de alta tecnología, equipo médico y otros. Y la actividad agropecuaria es fundamental, sobre todo a nivel de paisajes rurales. Las emisiones netas del país según el inventario de gases de efecto invernadero 2015, para el sector pecuario representan cerca del 15.8%, y para el sector agrícola 7.3% del total de las emisiones del país. O sea que no son las actividades mayormente emisoras. Aquí relevante tal vez que las emisiones por fermentación entérica han venido disminuyendo desde 1990 al 2012, pero eso lo vamos a ver tal vez en esta lámina que sigue. Esta lámina de alguna forma representa una radiografía del sector afolu costarricense. Podemos decir que algunas de las tareas ya las hemos completado. Vemos, por ejemplo, el gráfico de emisiones, y podemos ver cómo las emisiones por fermentación entérica han disminuido desde 1990 al 2000 más o menos, por una condición de contracción del hato nacional. A partir de ese momento se han estabilizado las emisiones, dado que el hato nacional pues tendió a estabilizarse y finalmente tiende a crecer un poco después de 2015. Pero si comparamos esas emisiones con el uso del suelo, comprobamos que el uso del suelo agropecuario disminuyó en ese mismo periodo de tiempo de un 60 a un 47%, lo cual comprueba que en menos cantidad de suelo agropecuario se está gestionando la agricultura del país. En ese mismo periodo de tiempo, entre 1984 y 2014, la cobertura forestal del país pasó de un 21% a un 52%, lo que comprueba que con menos animales, con menos área dedicada a pastos, se está logrando un aumento sustantivo en la cobertura forestal, lo que quiere decir que esos suelos que estaban dedicados a pasturas extensivas han pasado en ese periodo de tiempo a ser cobertura forestal. Y tal vez lo más relevante en este caso, en este juego de variables de emisiones, uso del suelo y cobertura boscosa o cobertura forestal, es que el valor económico de la producción se duplicó, el de la producción agropecuaria se duplicó desde 1990 a 2018, lo que comprueba un desacople entre emisiones y valor económico de la producción nacional. Esta es la base de la NDC y es la base del modelo de desarrollo que Costa Rica impulsa actualmente para el sector AFOLO. La NDC de Costa Rica fue actualizada en el 2020. En temas de mitigación, Costa Rica se compromete a un absoluto máximo de emisiones netas de 9.11 millones de toneladas de CO2 equivalente. Estas metas están perfectamente alineadas con el Plan Nacional de Descarbonización, la Estrategia Nacional de Largo Plazo presentada por Costa Rica en 2019, que busca emisiones netas cero en el 2050 y a su vez es consistente con la trayectoria de 1.0 grados centígrados. La NDC también tiene un componente de adaptación orientado a fortalecer las condiciones del país para lograr resiliencia social, económica y ambiental. Es un enfoque de desarrollo sostenible en donde a partir de ese enfoque de desarrollo sostenible, los efectos del cambio climático sobre las comunidades rurales y sobre la agricultura sean minimizados, de forma que el país cuente con instrumentos financieros de planificación, tecnologías y servicios que le permitan sobreponerse a la variabilidad climática y a los impactos debidos al cambio. La actualización de la NDC realizada en 2020 se basó en una serie de métodos cuantitativos y cualitativos con el apoyo de la Academia Costarricense y la cooperación. Aquí tal vez lo importante es que este proceso fue ampliamente participativo. Siempre hemos considerado que la participación del sector privado, de la academia, de la institucionalidad agropecuaria, ambiental, es fundamental para asegurarnos acuerdos que en lo sustantivo partan de la práctica, que partan de las lecciones aprendidas y que nos permitan avanzar sustantivamente hacia eficiencia productiva y ambiental. Dentro de los compromisos, las contribuciones definidas dentro de esa NDC, del total hay por lo menos 4 compromisos o contribuciones que el sector agropecuario plantea para reducir emisiones y para asegurar adaptación, principalmente para mitigación, el mejoramiento de las cadenas de valor prioritarias por uso del suelo, por cantidad de productores y por emisiones y por impacto de la economía. Y dentro de estas cadenas, quizá fundamental el tema de abordar la ganadería y conducirla y seguirla conduciendo bajo un modelo de producción ganadera sostenible que nos permite más eficiencia productiva y menos emisiones por unidad de producto. El Plan Nacional de Descarbonización es el marco político de implementación de la NDC. De los 10 ejes del Plan de Descarbonización, el 3, el 8, el 9 y el 10 están orientados al sector AFOLU, y de estos el 8 y el 9 están estrictamente relacionados a la NDC, están estrictamente relacionados a las metas nacionales de mitigación. El eje 8, fomento de sistemas agroalimentarios altamente eficientes que generen bienes de exportación. Estamos hablando de café, banano, caña, arroz, y ganadería. y el eje 9 orientado a la consolidación de un modelo ganadero basado en eficiencia productiva y en la reducción de emisiones. ¿Qué hemos hecho a la fecha? Podemos decir que hoy por hoy, lo que estamos haciendo es impulsando una base sólida de políticas con enfoque sectorial puntualmente para los sectores prioritarios por impacto en economía, pero también impacto en las emisiones, de forma que tenemos a nivel de ganadería una política, el impulso de una política nacional de ganadería sostenible. Tenemos en implementación una estrategia nacional de ganadería baja en carbono y estamos promoviendo una estrategia nacional de ganadería de carne baja en carbono y una estrategia nacional de ganadería de leche baja en carbono. Para los sectores agrícolas, tenemos ya una estrategia nacional de café baja en carbono y una estrategia nacional de banano baja en carbono. Estos marcos de política crean condiciones para la implementación de las NAMAs como instrumento nacional de transformación de los sectores. Desde 2013, finales 14, tenemos en implementación las NAMAs ganadería y café. Las dos están en fase de escalamiento y tenemos ya en fase de diseño para implementar en este año y pilotajes el año siguiente las NAMAs musáceas, arroz y caña de azúcar. Como resultados concretos, ya avanzamos la fase de piloto y estamos escalando la NAMA café, como les comentaba. Tenemos ya a nivel de mercado productos diferenciados. Tenemos un impacto importante a nivel de cantidad de fincas involucradas en el proceso de transformación del sector café. Igual sucede en el sector ganadero. Estamos también avanzando hacia diferenciación de producto. El pilotaje quedó atrás hace ya un año, estamos en fase de escalamiento, ya estamos aplicándola a nivel nacional en 1.200 fincas según lo que teníamos planificado. Ambas iniciativas contribuyen a ese modelo que estamos promoviendo para el sector AFOLO. Para terminar, el reto en la agricultura es muy importante. Estamos en tiempos de pandemia, hay que asegurar actividad económica, hay que asegurar bienestar humano y en ese proceso debemos seguir orientándonos bajo el enfoque que traemos de desacople de los impactos ambientales, asegurarnos menos emisiones, pero asegurarnos también menos impactos sobre otros factores del ambiente, generar más riqueza, pero en esa ruta de generar más riqueza, generar menos efectos ambientales negativos, generar más efectos ambientales positivos y servirnos de algunas disciplinas como la economía circular y la bioeconomía para seguir avanzando en esa ruta. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thank you so much. So it was very interesting to show all that integration of different policies from midterm to long term on this transform into national mitigation action, different NAMAs contributing to each other, and also remembering us to loop with the bioeconomy aspect and circular economy aspect. Now we will move back to Asia with a presentation concerning China by Professor Dong Hongmin. She's Professor and Deputy Director General of the Institute of Environmental and Sustainable Development in Agriculture and from the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Science. She has a strong experience in livestock, including she's a leading researcher for the Livestock Environment Program with the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Science, and she's also a member and strongly involved in IPCC work, mostly on chapter dedicated to livestock, but also she's contributing to the emission factor database board. So it's my pleasure to have Dong Hongmin with us and sharing China experience. So if you can hear me, can you please share your screen and start your presentation, remembering that you have 8 minutes?
Can you see my presentation?
I can see your screen, yes.
Okay.
All perfect. And we can hear you well also. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Pleasure to have this opportunity to share information on the develop low carbon agriculture by enhancing greenhouse gas mitigation through manure management in China. As all you know, China has put forward goals of carbon peaking and neutralization. In last September, President Xi declared in the general debate of the 75th UN conference, China will enhance its national determined contribution, adopt more effective policies and measures, strive for carbon dioxide emission to peak by 2030, carbon neutrality by 2030. This important announcement highlights China's ambitions and determination to cope with climate change, green and low carbon development. In our new adopted 5-year plan, China has set a mandate index for carbon dioxide emission per unit of the GDP will reduce by 18%. And make plan to achieve peaking of carbon dioxide emission around 2030 and making efforts to peak early, build a system to reduce carbon intensity mainly and control total carbon emission, and make efforts to control methane and other greenhouse gas. As all you know, livestock is one of the major greenhouse gas emissions in China. The total emission is 373 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, contribute 40% from agriculture, 4% of the national total, in which enteric contribute 16%, and manure contribute 40%. In our national determined contribution, manure utilization are one of the priority actions. It states that to promote the low carbon development in agriculture, we will construct a recycling agriculture, promote recycler agriculture, promote utilization of the animal manure utilization. The reason for the importance of the manure, because China is one of the largest livestock producer. China provides food for 20% of the world population, around 15% of the pig, 1/3 of the poultry, 1/5 of the sheep, and 1/10 of world total population were produced in China. And 92 million households engaged in the work related to animal productions. The total manure is around 3 billion tons. Intensive production contribute 75%. Household produced around 65. Pig was a major contributor. Around 60% of the manure is from pig. We have taken actions to promote manure utilization and control the environment pollution. In 2040, regulation on the prevention and control of pollution from intensive animal farmers were officially implemented. In 2017, General Office of the State Council released opinion of how to accelerating manure utilization. to establish a mechanism to promote the integration of crop production and livestock production, to promote the energy and fertilizer utilization by manure. In terms of action, we invested 20 billion RMB to support manure utilization, including full utilization in more than 500 large production counties, construct manure facility in intensive farmers, use organic fertilizer, replace chemical fertilizer in cash group, and provide subsidy for the manure equipment and machines. We demonstrate 7 typical modules for manure utilization, including full manure collection and land application, specialized biogas plant, compost of the solid manure, high-res manure fermentation bedding system, later recycling, fertilization of the wastewater, and up-to-date discharge of the wastewater. Because of those efforts, total amount and intensity of pollutant from livestock manure both decreased. Compared to 10 years ago, the number of livestock covered was nearly doubled. However, the wastewater, COD, total nitrogen and phosphorus decreased by more than 20. The emission intensity of COD, total nitrogen and total phosphorus per unit animal decreased by more than 50%. To further explore the greenhouse gas mitigation potential of the manure utilization, with the support of the Climate and Clear Air Coalition, CCAC, we are implementing a project named Contribution to Updating China's NDC and promoting the cooperation of the methane emission mitigation from manure management into the National 5-Year Work Plan. The mission of the project includes identification of the new practice and suitable applicable technology for reducing methane emission, quantification of the mitigation potential, provision of the policy recommendation for formulation of the new national work plan, and updating the NDCs. Till now, we made a thoroughly analysis of existing laws, policies, and action to the manure utilization. From 2014 to 2021, there are 5 laws, 3 national policies formally released or updated, 11 action plan or management strategy into the force. In our new National 5-Year Plan for 2021 and 2025, it already stated that further enhance manure utilization. We made a meta-analysis of the reduction potential of technology for different animals. You here use a pig as example to show result. We identify 17 options. Greenhouse gas mitigation potential could be the 40%. To make sure the practical of the mitigation technology, we hold the expert meeting, stakeholder consultant, and a farm surveyor to make further selections. Finally, we selected 8 technologies from feed management, low emission livestock horse, manure storage, treatment, and farmland utilization. Those including the low pollutant diet, separation of the feces and the urine, clean of the exhausted air, from housing, coverage of the manure storage lagoon, biologic reorganization of composting, covering of the compost, injection of the manure for land application, and anaerobic digester with a biogas recover. We are still working on the policy recommendation, maybe including the develop action plan on greenhouse gas mitigation from manure, demonstrate mitigation technology in large-scale intensive animal farmers, build MRV system for enhanced low-carbon agriculture development. Manure is part of those. Improve economic benefit of the manure utilization through carbon trade. We are looking for the collaboration with all of you, make full use of the network of the CCAC and FAO to share the experience on achieving improvement in animal productivity, manure utilization, environmental quality improvement, control greenhouse gas emission, at the same time, promote green low carbon agriculture development. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that very in-depth presentation showing how China is reacting on with a very good example of manure management, from identification of the typical models you have, the different options, and then the consultation process to reduce this to technology to be implemented to address the problem. So it was very interesting. So we have seen different examples from different countries. Now we will move back to a larger scale on a paper that has been commissioned by the CCAC to WRI on Oxfam. So we will have a presentation. You realize that we are still have 10 minutes left. So the question and answer session will be reduced to mostly a document. So we are collecting the question. So if you have a question, please write the question in French, in English, Spanish, whatever. We will collect the question, we will share with the panelists, and we will build a question answer document that we will share with all of you, and we will publish as an outcome of the output of that session in our website. So now we will move back now to the last presentation. That will be done by Ms. Rebecca Carter, Deputy Director of the World Resources Institute for the Climate Resilience Development Practices, and by also Laurel Pigorsh, that is Associate Policy Advisor for the Climate Change and Energy team at Oxfam America. Both are based in Washington, D.C. So I understand that you will share your presentation. So I let you manage, and please try to keep the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be with you all here today to talk a little bit more about the paper that that CCAC commissioned from World Resources Institute and Oxfam America. I'll start the presentation and then Laurel will jump in. So I want to talk a little bit about not only the mitigation focus of today's session, but also bring in adaptation a little bit. I think there are great opportunities to foster increased action on both adaptation and mitigation through win-win solutions in agriculture. And I'll talk a little bit in a few minutes about what some of those are. But I think there's a great opportunity to support particularly our small-scale, vulnerable farmers and herders who, as our speaker from Kenya noted, especially are really already being very challenged by climate change impacts. We can indeed align the agriculture sector with low emissions transformations, bring together climate action with the SDGs, and attract investment and support by looking at win-win solutions for adaptation and mitigation in agriculture. So if we take a global view of countries that submitted sectoral agriculture mitigation NDCs, those are the ones in the blue, for the first round of NDCs, we can see that it was indeed a great many countries. But if we compare that to adaptation NDCs, we can actually see that it was as many or perhaps more countries that submitted adaptation NDCs. So, you know, I think it's quite clear that this is very much on countries' minds as well as mitigation. And just to share kind of a sneak peek of some research that we have not yet published by WRI, where we've compared first and second NDCs from countries across a number of sectors. The first one there that's circled in red being food and nutrition security. The yellow bar is how many adaptation actions we found in the first round of agriculture NDCs. The blue bar is how many we're seeing in the enhanced NDCs in the second round. And you can see that there's been substantial growth in the specificity with which countries are approaching adaptation in their NDCs for agriculture in particular. So what do I mean by these win-win solutions? Let's take a quick look at these. We're talking here about actions like more sustainable production and consumption measures, such as reduced food loss and waste, and shifts to healthier and more sustainable diets that can give us both adaptation and mitigation benefits. Broader land management measures, such as improved pastures for grazing, improved soil and water management, including through agroecological approaches, reduced use of fire as a management strategy, and improved soil fertility. And I think many of our speakers today spoke of some of these measures. We can also think about better livestock management, again, a big focus for today, such as improved feed and animal health and breeding, which can result in higher ruminant productivity and improve farmers and herders' livelihoods and give them the ability to be more resilient to climate change impacts. And finally, better crop management measures, which can increase the potential yield of crops and help farmers achieve better yields by taking the environment into account and being more resilient to some of the environmental and climatic challenges that we're seeing. I'm keeping this very brief because I know we're a bit over time and there are many interesting questions in the chat, but let me go ahead and shift the virtual microphone over to Laurel Pagorsh from Oxfam to say a few more words. Laurel?
Thanks, Rebecca, and hi, everyone. So I'll jump right in here. Outlined here, you can see there are a variety of ways that agriculture can be incorporated into enhanced NDCs, in addition to the technical solutions that Rebecca just mentioned. So these include strengthened implementation of adaptation or mitigation measures through inclusive processes, strengthened governance, communications, and extension services as well. So those also streamline and mobilize finance. So all of these things can help support successful implementation. Next, agriculture-specific actions have, as we've seen by many countries, been included in economy-wide targets, which are being strengthened, or new targets are being set. But there are also options to enhance agriculture-specific or emission-specific targets in agriculture, as we've heard methane emission reductions from livestock, for example. And that targeted abatement can really enhance transparency and accountability of those real emission reductions in the agriculture sector. Also, clarity and transparency of climate policies can go a really long way in facilitating and understanding the benefits of those actions, and especially if the development of those policies include all stakeholders as well, and those are set up and tailored to the context of small-scale farmers and vulnerable communities. So those are supported. So those also dovetail with a section in the paper that we outlined as the foundations for action, which really set the stage for enhanced actions that are inclusive, equitable, and also provide the opportunity to be scaled. So first, you can see scoping the national agriculture sector. That is what, but also who, from smallholders to large-scale farmers, and also the incredible variety of land ownership and management systems. So the bottom line being, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. And as we know, there are 2.5 billion people around the world that depend on agriculture for their livelihoods, and the active inclusion of those stakeholders can also significantly strengthen the quality and the durability of an NDC, especially the diverse voices like Indigenous peoples and women's groups as well. The next foundational piece here you can see is coordination and alignment both across and within government, especially when it comes to agriculture and climate. There are a lot of opportunities and synergies there, and the coordination can also reduce capacity constraints and also duplication costs as well. Along that same line of capacity, many countries flagged MRV systems as a challenge in the agriculture sector in their first NDCs. Now every country is at a different point in strengthening these systems, but a really robust modeling system can also help facilitate transparent and clear understanding of why and how certain targets were developed. So that can also be an important communication tool. You can also see here the importance of identifying opportunities for support, both international and domestic, including redirecting agriculture subsidies to more climate resilient production. But the final foundational piece is enabling equitable and inclusive governance, meaning building a rights-based approach from the start. And the three main areas that can really increase opportunities and reduce risks and vulnerabilities of agriculture communities are gender equality, secure land tenure, sensitive to customary rights, and also upholding social safeguards and the rights of small-scale farmers. So I encourage you all to read the report. Those are just some highlights, difficult to do in a short amount of time, but feel free to download the paper on the CCAC website. It's available in French, English, and Spanish, or feel free to contact us as well. And with that, thank you, and I'll pass back to Marshall.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Laurel and Rebecca, for sharing this in a really limited amount of time. I put the link also on the chat. So we are reaching the end of that session. I know you are sometimes frustrated not to ask and to exchange, but we will try to do that in a remote way as we are forced nowadays. We have no coffee, no corridor exchange. So do not hesitate to write. You still have a few minutes to write your question, saying to whom it is addressed. We will collect all the questions. We will provide answers, sharing this with the different panelists. And then we will draft a document and translate it in English, in French, and in Spanish, and to have this available for all of you. What I want to do first is to thank all the panelists for sharing their experience, what the country are doing, the lesson learned from a global level. We have seen the foundation for action. We have seen a broad range of action that can benefit both adaptation. This is very, very important for people, and mitigation. This is very, very important for the overall planet, and at the end, every single person on Earth. And we have seen the importance of the agriculture sector. That is really a specific sector where you can have action that will tackle both mitigation, adaptation, and also benefiting food security, sustainable development. And we have seen here when we are working on short life climate pollutant, we can help solving the pollution equation. That is nowadays also an emerging issue, really as important as climate change. So thanks to all of you. Please write your question before leaving. I wish you a wonderful day with a wonderful climate and a clean air. So thank you to all of you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Au revoir.